What is up, fellow sickos? I'm Dan Valley coming at you with Mort Jensen of the NBA podcast fame, of Yahoo Sports fame, of Forbes fame, and of course, OnlyFans celebrity. We're here to talk about stuff, a lot of it depressing, depending on which fan base you root for. Before we get started, have to begin with the Dame stuff, of course. Mort, how are you doing?
So I'm actually doing pretty well. It's funny you bring up the OnlyFans thing because I had I had a guy reach out to me and basically say, "Look, if you don't make that one soon, I will." And like he's like he wasn't kidding. He's like, "You got to make it a reality just to have it now, like just to have the account." So
now
I'm actually
they're going to make an AI. They're going to make an AI Mort Jensen OnlyFans, which means that you have to beat them to it and make the real Mort OnlyFans.
Right. Yeah. No, well, he did say something interesting. He said, remember, the people at OnlyFans actually wanted to go away from the naughty stuff. Remember that? They actually wanted to close that whole thing down and become like quote unquote serious. So like apparently there is content on that platform that isn't naughty. Like, okay.
How do you cross it? There should be can you cross it over? You got to meld it together. What's naughty NBA content look like?
Naughty. Well, look, I mean,
do we just put like the porn 1970 porn music? Like I think of Will Chamberlain, like bow behind all your monologues. Let's do that.
Right. And we go into all of like the Luther Head, Rudy Gay jokes out there, all of them, Kevin Love. Like we go into all the funny names. That's it, right? Because it's actually funny you asked me that because I remember this goes way back to like when I was 16, 17, I had this idea that I don't know why, but maybe because I was still such a fan at that point, I wasn't covering the league. So I just looked up to the NBA. And I remember at school, there was a girl who came over and I was looking at stats where they had pictures of players on it. And she was like, "Oh my God," she said, like, "he's so ugly." And I never looked at it in that light. I was like, okay, look, there are more attractive NBA players than this guy. I think she picked out like Petrak Dropnach or something like that. It was egregious. And I showed her like 50 NBA players thinking, yeah, like she's going to eat her words. And she was like, nope. Every single one of them was basically ugly until we arrived at Sean Marion. And she was like, oh yeah, he can have it. And so like, maybe that's a category. Maybe like, let's simply rate NBA players, not on their skills, but just on their way they look.
I mean, that's wild regression. That's like Wags territory from 10 years ago.
It's the start of Facebook, the Facebook. That was the whole point. Anyway, we just do it with NBA players.
Yeah. we need to move on from here because now I'm depressed.
I know. Me too.
I think we need to start with Dame. Shocker. He's officially been diagnosed with a torn Achilles from that MRI.
Yeah.
He does have... There are two things I want to hit with this before getting into the Bucks. He does have a history of like lower body calf stuff, and we know he was dealing with the DVT that was in his right calf. There was some speculation that he shouldn't have come back. The Bucks shouldn't have been playing him. Right. The medical sports experts, and like some of them are actual doctors, have all kind of said that's not what happened here. So I'm just saying, I don't think Damian Lillard or the Bucks did anything wrong here, is what it seems like. And then the second thing is, this just sucks, man. This is just like, he's going to be 35. This isn't, Kevin Durant who can rise up and jump shoot over everybody. He needs to dribble and create and be crafty for the full breadth of his impact to be felt. It just sucks. Even if you didn't think the Bucks' window was open, quote unquote, with him and Giannis together, this blows. These serious injuries always blow, but this is someone who is incredibly entertaining to watch. I think he helped really reshape the way that NBA offense is played. And it just... even looking kind of at the him and Giannis lens of it all, they've now played in like 2 and change playoff games together. Even if you didn't think their window was open, we were supposed to get more than that from their time together.
Man, look, Dame for so many years was one of my favorite players to watch. Just one of the most entertaining dudes. Like, remember that shot against OKC in the playoffs? Like, just to have the balls, the audacity to take that shot. And was it Paul George afterwards was it, well, it was a bad shot. Like everyone was trying to downplay like the shot selection, but like, here's the thing. Nobody cares. Like, be fun, Paul George. Shut up. Just acknowledge that it was a crazy good shot. But it just to have that willpower, have that confidence to take that shot at that point in time in the way that he did it. It's like the balls of this guy. And that's always been the way I've looked at Dame. Like he's just so unafraid of everything. So this sucks so much. It also obviously there's so many like ripple effects that we'll get into about the Bucks and Giannis and all of this because of this injury. Like you never want to see a guy of this caliber potentially alter his career that way. I mean, look, we can't hide from the fact that Kobe wasn't the same, and that was a similar age, right? Like 35, 36, and just never the same guy. And of course, there are guys who came back from Achilles tears and did well, and I do think doctors nowadays are better than ever in fixing it, but it'd be such a shame if we are now going to see like a 17-point per game Damian Lillard who's like shooting in the mid-30s from here on out. That would be god-awful and just a horrific way to like wrap up the final few years of his career. So here's hoping he'll have a KD turnaround.
Yeah, and even that, how old was KD? Because Lillard's going to be 35 this summer, I believe, and so he's not going to come back until he's 36. Like, he doesn't play next season. That would be pretty surprising, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Bucks do like to rush him back, so we'll see.
Okay, don't add fuel to that fire. You mentioned it though, like the shot against OKC. Even remember that Houston series felt like his sort of that was just his his touchstone moment in the sense of, oh, this dude's going to be a problem, and I think he'll go down. Like he's one of those players where the anecdotes and the stats kind of align, where he's probably just going to go down as one of the most clutch players of all time, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I hate the fact that we have to say that, like, he's going to go down as that. Like, we're always already talking about him as if the career's over. I hate that.
I don't mean to eulogize it. It's just, it's very rare that players would, I mean, I don't even know if it's very rare so much as Kevin Durant, like, came back and was basically Kevin Durant. And it's just different, I think. So I hope he comes back and, you know, it'll be in the final year of his deal at that point. Like, and he's just annihilatory. It sucks though. He's older and he's a small point guard to begin with, which I think you would argue those guys are typically at an inherent disadvantage when it comes to the aging curve of their games. And you throw an Achilles tear into this, and it sucks. That's what I keep coming back to, is it sucks.
He's also one of those few active guys who are like superstars and gets to the line a ton, who's actually drilling almost 90% for his career, like 89.9 for his career on like 6.5 attempts over 900 games. The concentration level that you have to hit 90% of your free throws over the course of 900 NBA games is just ridiculous. Like 900 games played, 25 points per game as well. Like the raw stats, like, oh my God. No, this guy, like, I'm not going to eulogize either, but like this guy is definitely going down as an all-timer for sure. And also in the entertainment atmosphere as well. Almost 3,000 threes as well. God, I mean, this all sucks.
Did you have his career stats pulled up? How many points does he have for his career?
22,500.
So hopefully he'll still join the 25,000 point club. I think he should still be around long enough to do that. That'll be good.
That'd be nice. And he cracked 6,000 assists this year. Like, he was never an elite playmaker. So I actually think that's a pretty solid mark for someone who isn't like.
He did. What was it? The Pelican series that they lost way back when? It felt like he came, not that he was ever one of the best playmakers in the game, but he came out of that series and then came back the next season as just a different type of passer when it was reacting to all his attention defenses were throwing at him. And so that was also super cool to see. And this was something where, you know, just to run counter to the doom and gloom, maybe he comes back and just because the way you could technically leverage him off the ball, like, he in theory wouldn't be able to pinball around the same way. And maybe it gets harder to make sharp cuts or even set screens. But as someone who's just a transcendent shooter, like, there is the floor spacing element of maybe you don't need to dominate the action. You can still levy a real impact.
Yeah. And look, I mean, it's not like when Clay went down, that was the ACL tear though, first and foremost. And that was the Achilles during his rehab, unfortunately. Like, Clay was a good defender before he went down. He was actually a very good defender. Dame has never had that, you know, reputation. Reputation. That was the word.
He might also be one of the worst transition defenders of all time, if we're being honest.
Right. So like, we can probably argue there's not a lot lost in that department, probably with the lack of foot speed coming back. So like, if he can just key in offensively and just space the floor, perhaps that's the pathway. That'd be wonderful.
Maybe we'll get to a point, not that this would be it, but kind of how there's still serious injuries, but when someone suffers an ACL tear, it's not, over. Like,
Right.
could Achilles eventually become this? Is this part of that
Right.
progression? I will cross my fingers for it, even if that goes against what science says at the moment.
But I will say this though, because I had a conversation with someone about this, and that was like because both Kyrie and Dame now went down in the same year with like devastating injuries, and he made the same point, like, well, an ACL tear isn't that bad anymore. Where I'm like, well, I mean, sure, if you're in your early 20s, that's true. Like for a guy like Kyrie, who's what 33, I want to say 32, 33, somewhere along those lines. I'm still not entirely sure he's out of the woodshed, although like knock on wood that he is, but like it just gets tougher coming back from injuries when you're in your mid 30s, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I need more rest following like weightlifting workouts, let alone playing, high level physical super athletic basketball for
Right.
35 plus minutes night in and night out. Let's talk a little bit about though what this means for the Bucks. And so this will be timestamped. So if you want just to hop to the Giannis trade stuff, which has to be a conversation about all that, but I really do think it deserves more of a setup as to, well, why are people going to jump to the Giannis trade stuff? And I think a lot of that, you just talked about this extensively. You said on another podcast. I was writing about this a little while ago. The Bucks are going to enter this offseason about $23 million below the luxury tax. That does not include a new deal for Brook Lopez, who's a free agent. It also assumes that Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton pick up their player option. Pat Connaughton, duh. Bobby Portis, I'm kind of on the fence about, like, if he might be able to get a longer deal that just gets him more money. Also notably, though, Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince hasn't been like a huge part of what they've been doing in the playoffs, but as someone who's on a minimum contract, they've both been hyper important. They can be free agent. They are going to be free agents, and the Bucks don't have bird rights on them. And so it's if they're not going to be able to offer them what will be the taxpayer mid-level exception, or maybe they're able to stay out of the tax if Lopez leaves. Those are two guys that are probably gone, though. Dame himself has 2 years and $112.6 million left on his contract. I think this is the beginning of that Portland extension, and I think he's also extension eligible this summer, if that matters to anyone. And so you're not dealing with a ton of financial flexibility here is the point. And then you look at the Bucks' pick equity. They can trade up to 1 first and 1 first round swap this summer. That is it. And then you get into, all right, well, what's the best package you could get for that? You have to attach it to salary. Brook Lopez is a free agent. Damian Lillard just got injured. Who are you attaching it to? Does Kyle Kuzma have any value? That he has not been great for the Bucks. His contract is not, he's 2 years under $41 million left. So it's not, that's a deal you can move. I just don't know wherever you want to start off this list, Mort. But the Kyle Kuzma thing is, I think he's eminently movable, but I don't think he's part of the value that you're sending out anymore, probably.
Right. No, you can, he's a contract. That's what he is. He's a contract that you can send out. He's sort of a filler. He is not someone who an NBA team goes in and identifies and goes, oh yeah, that's the guy we want. If a team does that, Milwaukee needs to squeeze everything they can out of that and just, I don't know.
Nico Harrison on line 3.
Right.
Nico Harrison on line 3.
Exactly. I mean, that has to be the thinking there because he is not an asset. The issue here, so I recorded a Danish podcast about this. You're absolutely right. And we spent like an hour and a half on it. This was before Dame went down. So we also went into like the whole idea of trading Dame. And even with him before the injury, we were both like, my co-host and I were like, Dame is probably worth more as a player than as a trade asset right now.
Oh yeah.
So that also like complicates matters a great deal. There isn't anything that just stands as a major boon for Milwaukee outside of Giannis. Like even Ryan Rollins, that was hard to say apparently. I'm okay. That was tough. That was a tough one. All the R's. Good player. I'm actually pretty optimistic about his future. He's going to be a restricted free agent, so that there might be more money on the cap from there. Like Kevin Porter Jr., despise him as a human being, as a basketball player, he's fine, and he's
been too important to them, though. Yeah, you're right. That's right. Player option, I think he has, right?
Player option, $2.5 million. He could leave. Like, it's just, so contractually speaking, there's not a whole lot to do here, but more importantly, Giannis also wants to win. I understand how in love with Milwaukee he is. And I will say on Blue Sky, I did like air this, the possibility that he could leave. A lot of Bucks fans did take, well, I mean, I don't want to say they took offense, but they were like, no more, like Giannis loves Milwaukee. He's going to stay regardless. And I'm reaching that point where that would be romantic. Like, yes, that would absolutely be romantic if he was just like, yes, I want to stay with this organization regardless. But I don't think he's wired that way. Could you not see Giannis just by the 20-game mark next year if it's still Doc Rivers on the sidelines and it's like a piss poor roster all around him? They're playing like 400 ball, and he's just like, no, I can't. What the hell? What are we doing here? That scenario is very, very obvious to me.
I think it's obvious, and I mean, I do want to go there, but what I really want to ask you is like, what is the case for the Bucks to not take the initiative going down that
there
path?
Isn't one. There isn't one. What can they? Where, like, realistically speaking, where can they go from here to build something?
Well, I don't, for next season, I really don't know. You would have to hope like Dame coming back in 2026, 2027, and that are you able to but if you're operating under the assumption Dame doesn't play next season, I get, what are you obligated to bring back? Brooke, what is the best? And now all of a sudden, what's your primary like priority if you're going on the trade market and saying, we're going to put the pick and the swap on the table and attach whatever money we need to? It has to be another self-creator. And are you looking at it through, because you don't have Dame and you arguably needed something like that as well anyway? And so you have to look at it through two lenses of, was it just get the best player we can? Or are you also trying to, we also would like someone who could fit with Dame and Giannis when Dame is healthy enough to play down the line. I think it's I do think.
But who's that player? I'm sorry to interrupt, but who's that player? Like, give me a name or give me like a talent level. What type of talent level are we looking at here? Are we looking at all-star? Are we looking at good starter? What type of player quality are we looking at here?
Without Dame, it probably needs to skew all-star, and that's the problem is that...
Yeah, can you get that guy?
No, that's what I was going to say, is that you can't find the ideal name, and so then you can get into the pattern of, well, just get the best player that you can and figure out the rest later. But without Dame, the gap between them and like the Cavs and the Celtics, like is I would say insurmountable. And then it's, can they even catch the Pacers or the Knicks with a type of like hitting a double on the trade market?
No.
So they probably can. And so you look at next year specifically, and you're saying it would have to be almost a gap year, which rings hollow when you don't control the fate of your own first round pick. Giannis, that'll be is that his age 31 season? He's 30 now.
See, that's the thing. Giannis can't afford a gap year. Like, he is going to be 31 this year.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here though and say,
yes, great.
I don't know if Giannis isn't going to ask for out and I'm the Bucks just because I don't control my own draft picks. I can see the case. It's sort of like Devin Booker in Phoenix, to where it's worse because you can't just trade him to one place and say, we're going to get back 2 of our first distant or 3 of our distant first round picks. Like, that option isn't really available to them. So if there's a package that kind of one of the, if Giannis, here's my point. If Giannis doesn't ask for out, and this could be a repeat of what we say that Portland should have taken the initiative and moved Damian Lillard. I think this is different in the sense that Portland never even did enough to optimize the Damian Lillard window, and they were very clearly moving toward a future timeline. It seemed like they just didn't want to be the ones to lose the press conference or end the relationship, and they put the onus on him. In this case, you're not because at the end of this shit-stained rainbow, I guess, if you're rebuilding, you don't control your own picks. If Giannis doesn't want to leave and he wants to give it another season, I'm not sure if I could take the initiative and move him anyway. Maybe they could, because we did see Horst, he kept Drew Holiday's name out of trade talks, and they say that was out of respect to Drew, but that was really out of respect to the Bucks, because Drew probably would have liked a heads up that a trade was coming. When we just saw them move Chris Middleton to Washington, I don't think he, I'm not saying he was a malcontent in Washington. It seems like they really appreciate his voice, but I'm sure he didn't want to go to the Wizards. So maybe they have the gall to move Giannis without him asking. But man, if he says, I want to give it at least another year, and he just, I'm not going to request a trade midseason, I'll gut it out, I would have a tough time moving him, because this is a once in a lifetime type of talent. And I don't even see and we can get to that. I think that's the next phase. But I wanted to ask, if he doesn't ask for out, that doesn't change your calculus here at all?
No, it doesn't. What I do, if he doesn't ask out, even if he comes to me and says, look, I want to be here another year, I'm going to ask him for a meeting, him and his agent, and I'm going to sit them both down and say, look, while we greatly appreciate that, and while we absolutely understand that having you on this roster is an enormous asset, and you mean everything to us as a franchise, you're the best player in franchise history, there's no way we're going to be better in the long run here unless we have to replenish our cupboard. So how about you and I work together, you and your agent and me, we work together on finding a situation that's optimal for you and where the trade return is optimal for us. Because this is just kicking the can down the road. And we, as an organization who have grown fond of you, also don't want to see you waste a year of your prime. We are fans of yours. We've seen you grow up right in front of our eyes. We want to make sure that you are happy with the rest of your career. And we also want to make sure that we're on the right path moving forward as an organization.
I think I lean towards that argument. I just think when that play, like replenishing your cupboard, unless it's someone you're getting back that you believe you can rebuild around, it just gets so tough because then you get into shorting futures of other teams because you can't dictate. Like you just don't have control over your own first round picks. They won't have control of their own first rounder until 2031. That's a really long time.
But that means you got to get the draft picks elsewhere. And look, I have a trade. I don't know if we should get there already. I can save it for later, but I have one.
Well, I guess let's move on to that. Just to like the cliff notes on the Giannis stuff is that I would call his, and you could tell me if you disagree with this nutshell, is he basically has said, I will stay in Milwaukee until I decide that I can't contend there. And that's basically just been what he said. So like he has sounded someone, not like he's, throwing out these threats, but I don't think where there's other players that maybe you couldn't envision requesting a trade. I do think Giannis is the type of player that would. We also had Chris Haynes, whose cousin is Giannis's fiance, for people who care about that stuff, says he doesn't think Antetokounmpo finishes his career in Milwaukee. I don't know how much I read into that specifically because I think we could say that about literally any player who's yet to change teams in the NBA. Like, what is it'd be hard to envision Jokic on another team, but I'm not going to rule out Jokic finishing his career on another team. He has 3 years and $175 million left on his deal, player option at the end of that. You said you had a trade. Is there like let's hear that first trade then, because I'm interested to see like because I think when you mentioned the not like having control of their own draft picks, I know you say you got to get the draft picks somewhere else, but if you're trading Giannis somewhere, you're inherently, I would say, diminishing the value of that team's own draft picks, which I think really complicates those packages.
If you think I haven't taken that into account, sir, you must think very lowly of me.
No. I didn't say you would take it into account. I'm saying I'm going to be fascinated to see how your packages account for that.
So there are 2 picks in a package of a total of 5 picks, all first rounders, that are that team's own, where you just kind of say, all right, well, but they're in 29 and 31. So like they might actually be good. It's the San Antonio Spurs. The deal is Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, then the Chicago pick in 2026, the unprotected Atlanta pick in 2027, which could be pretty juicy. Then there's a Boston pick in 2028, which, I'm not closing the door on that being more interesting than what it is right now, because we have we've heard the rumblings about like the Celtics might actually eventually think it's time to be concerned about the tax and new ownership. We don't really know. And then it's the Spurs themselves that send out 2 unprotected picks from themselves in 29 and 31.
That's a really good package, and I love me some Devin Vassell. I actually like that Steph Castle's not in there because I'm just lower on him long term than a lot of other people. If he never develops like any semblance of a jumper, I don't know like what his ceiling then becomes. And so I think to me, I'd rather try to start building a team around Devin Vassell than I would Steph Castle. With that said, now is that Boston pick? That's a swap, right?
Oh, it might be. I'm looking at a screen grab that I did of it, so I don't remember the details of that. I do think so. Perhaps it's a swap. Yeah.
Which is still, I mean, pretty, like you said, distant. Having the having a Bulls pick in there. You said a Bulls pick, right?
Correct. In 2026, it's protected though. So like
For top 8.
Yes, correct. But it's the Bulls, so who knows?
Right. They're going to do everything in their power to make sure they convey that pick, maybe. So I think the Boston one is a swap. So, but it's top 1 protected. That's a really loose swap. That's a good. The Atlanta pick, of course. And then you said so. It's a Spurs 29 pick. Was
and
the other
31.
One? Yeah, that's a really good package. I actually don't. The idea of having, I guess Wemby's a good enough shooter, but to have Steph Castle and Giannis on the same team, Giannis has improved a lot from the mid range though. But like De'Aaron Fox, Steph, Giannis, like that's a lot of iffy shooting.
Yeah, so it's interesting you bring that up because that was something in Danish, of course, we were talking about as well. Like, yes, the spacing would be an issue. So basically, mandate from ownership and from leadership would be to just surround those guys with shooters. Like you would have to, like from the bench and guys who can come in, like everyone else on the roster, more or less, would have to be floor spacers.
I don't hate it. That's like that. What's wild about that with the Spurs is, so what assets do they have left in their clip after that?
They actually still had a fair bit, believe it or not.
They still have the Wolves picks, right? Or no, they sent
had
one
the
of those
Wolves.
swaps
Yeah,
out.
had the Wolves. Yeah, and then of course because of the Stepien rule, they would still have their own picks, some of their own picks, because you just can't trade everything. And then, like as you kind of alluded to, you might not be high on Stephon Castle. I'm enormously high on him, although I do share your concerns about the shooting because that shooting is, oh boy, like when you break it down in terms of how he hits and how he misses, it's pretty bleak. It's a
weird. I just want to clarify because we always catch shit when I talk about Steph Castle for some reason. I actually think his ceiling is higher than I expected because like the defense was kind of as advertised. Right. The passing is just so good. Some of the reads that he was making, and so I'm like, man, if that guy had like a consistent, and we know he can get and finish to the rim, if he had a consistent set jumper or like the in between, just like floater, just an operable mid range jumper, then his ceiling becomes way higher than I would have thought coming out of the draft. I just think there's a higher chance that he hits his floor, not that he hits his ceiling, just that there's a higher chance than you would like that he kind of never hits his ceiling. Like that's uncomfortable.
Okay. Yeah, no, I hear you. I think to me it's the fact that I thought he was far more intelligent on the court than I thought he would be. Not that I thought he would be dumb. Like I watched him at UConn, but I thought it would take a couple of years for that basketball IQ to sort of carry over and improve to like NBA standard. He came out rolling like that, just with reading the floor in great ways, both defensively and offensively. I think him immediately realizing that his strength and his body is an asset is also something that makes me feel very comfortable about his future. Like I can't even tell you how many Spurs games I've seen where he'll attack from the baseline and he'll have a bigger dude on him, like rotate over. He will power through that motherfucker's chest and go up and dunk him in the face, where I'm like, did that just happen? Did a 6'6" dude just bump off a 6'11", 260 center and just yam in his face? Oh yeah. Like that. So there's something there. There's a fearlessness that I adore. There's the ability to get to the free throw line. There's the passing. There's obviously the defense. He's also, in my perspective, a pretty good rebounder and someone who will only get better in that regard. It all comes down to the three. The three is going to be the swing skill. But if there's an organization out there where I'm perhaps less worried about that, is probably San Antonio.
The other thing, too, it'd be fun. I don't know if we'd be there next season, but like there'd be a time probably soon where Giannis is all of a sudden just the third best defender on a team, and that's kind of terrifying.
Yep.
That package is right in line. I'd have some hesitance, just like what San Antonio's offense ends up looking like, but the talent on that team would just be so undeniable. And
look, do we really worry about Wemby's shooting and all this?
No, if we really think about it. You're still playing with 3 questionable shooters at least in the interim as part of your core lineup, I think that's a pretty risky gambit.
Right. Well, Giannis, Fox, and Castle, I presume.
Yeah. And it would work. I just don't know, like, what would the ceiling on that offense be in the playoffs? A lot would hinge on Wemby, De'Aaron Fox, and Steph Castle, just like how those guys develop, or does De'Aaron Fox, like, can his shooting kind of make the right turn where it dipped a little bit this year? I think the compensation is probably right in line with what Milwaukee should be thinking about, though.
Perhaps you do something like this will take some convincing, but perhaps you go to Castle and his team and you say, look, we have this opportunity to go get Giannis and make a run, like a real run. How about you become, our sixth man sounds so horrible, but like just our sixth starter. Like, you're going to play 30 minutes, but you're going to come off the bench just so you can sort of take over those second units. They might still have to keep Chris Paul around. Like, I would imagine Chris could be convinced to return for a year. Like,
yeah, I mean, the fact that he stayed there all year this season.
Yeah. And if you're starting Julian Champagnie at the 3, which I presume you would, you're probably pivoting off Kelton Johnson for more depth. All of a sudden, your starting lineup could be CP3, De'Aaron Fox, Julian Champagnie, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Victor Wembanyama, and then you have Stephon Castle and a couple guys coming off the bench who can do stuff.
I'd be intrigued. Let's talk about another team that I think is mentioned a ton. There's two that I feel like we're obligated to mention. Houston. A lot of this to me feels like they just have the assets, and so this is what they should do, I guess. But what is like Giannis does bring another offensive weapon to what they're doing. He's certainly better than any of just their playoff performers, right? Like, you're going to trust him more than a Jalen Green. You're going to trust him more than an Alperen Sengun, than a Fred VanVleet. But like, are you? I don't know, what does that package begin to look like? And then to me, I'd still look at them and say, like, they still need to go out and either hope that if he's not traded, Reed Shepherd is that dude, or they need to go out and find that dude who can still be kind of the outside in. Like, we saw Giannis level up his playmaking this year without Dame. So I'm not trying to short shrift Giannis here, but I still think they would need that top, like, play, like that advantage creator from one of the perimeter spots.
No, they would. They would. I mean, because presumably a package would be Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith, Amin Thompson, and like Tari Eason or something along those lines, where like that's a lot of guys who are heavily involved in both the defense and offense that would go the other way. So you are going to be reliant on someone coming in and taking over some ball handling duties, just basically making decisions with the ball in their hands. Who is that going to be? Like, Giannis is going to take some of that. But like, if you're looking at a Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Giannis Antetokounmpo core, which, well, Sengun is in there as well. Like, do you trust the ball handling from a perimeter creation perspective? I'm not sure.
Would you, if you're the Rockets, you just kind of outline that package? If it's going to cost you Amen Thompson, additional picks, I'd be curious to see what they would prefer the salary to be. It's because they could pick up Fred VanVleet's team option and say maybe Milwaukee doesn't want to deal with just that expiring contract, but maybe they do. Maybe they want that type of to offload that type of number in 1 year. They have a bunch of different routes that they could go when it comes to matching salaries.
Right. And they also have I have one note, by the way. They also have guys who can step into some of those roles. Like, you pivot off Amin Thompson and Tari Eason, for example. Like, I'm not saying it's 1-to-1, but you can give Ken Whitmore some of those minutes. You can make sure that Jason Tate is back and give him some of those minutes. Like, there are guys who can come in and take some of those minutes. Like, they're not empty.
Do you know what's also interesting to me? And maybe the Bucks wouldn't be interested in this, but in this scenario, I think he's really good. But just because there would still be redundancies, and they would be more expensive redundancies now when you look at what they're both making, are you trying to include Alperen Sengun in this instead of Amen Thompson? I guess if you're not getting the kind of top level offensive creator we're talking about, maybe you don't want to. But if your plan is to go out and get that player, or you think it could be Reed Shepherd, or that he could be going to Milwaukee's part of this, the player that we want the Rockets to get, and it's not even necessarily Giannis, I think they invariably by default come in and they infringe upon Sengun's importance, because you're looking for someone who would deserve to operate with the ball more than him.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I wouldn't be against.
I would say
anything.
If he's not included, this would increase the likelihood that he is then moved as part of another deal, is what I would think.
That is also fair. I mean, at this look, I don't think there's anyone on the Rockets where I'm like, no, this guy is just off the table for Giannis. Like everyone's in play. And that's, I say that fully realizing how much I love this iteration of Houston and the youthfulness of this roster. But like, if you want to take that one step up, Giannis or Devin Booker, that is the type of guy. Kevin Durant is not the guy because he might retire a year and a half from now. Like, we don't know. It's just, I don't want to go after, the super old guys. A guy like Giannis.
Do you know, we could say this about one other team aside from the Rockets. They could just get both. Like Giannis, and I guess the Suns don't want to move Devin Booker, but like in theory, if you don't include those Suns picks, because you have other picks, but like you would just still. My point is, we talk about San Antonio would have some assets left over, but like Houston could trade for Giannis and then probably turn around and go get another All NBA type player.
That's interesting. Giannis and Book, and like if we have to make some assumptions on who's left on this roster. Like is
probably Jabari Smith, I think.
Jabari Smith. Okay.
I'm not that he's
and Fred.
What's that?
And Fred, I assume, right?
Well, I guess I was thinking in my head, you're using Fred as like you're picking up his team option and sending him to one of these teams as like a salary anchor.
So Jalen Green is still around?
Well, I guess there's so many different paths they could travel down, like because maybe I think you can get away making one mega trade without including one of your younger large salaries like Jalen Green or Alperen Sengun is my point. But if you're trying to make two, one of them is gone. You'd probably prefer it to be Jalen Green, but I also think if Giannis is coming in, you're probably more open. And if it's Devin Booker coming in, does it make sense like Jalen Green is the out one? But there's so many different ways they could game it. Would you prefer that like they decline Fred VanVleet's team option, bring him back at a smaller number, and you've now traded Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun as like part of getting Giannis and Book together?
Look, sir, we've just seen 2 years of positional overlap in Phoenix with Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. I am not playing that fucking game again. No way are we going into the positional overlap thing again. Nope. The whole idea that, then Book can play the one because he's a great pick and roll guy. Let's just not. Let's not. Let's actually unleash him in the capacity that he was meant to be unleashed, which is, traditionally speaking, a shooting guard.
So I disagree in the sense I do think that I think what happened with the Suns said more about the lack of adaptability for Bradley Beal's game. And I think that Jalen Green has not necessarily needed to be, and like we've seen it this year, like, they need him to get buckets, but like he is not needed to monopolize the offense the way that some of these other higher end guys have. But I am with you. I want to make that clear. If I'm getting Devin Booker, I probably don't. I want Jalen Green to be a part of that package or whatever other package I'm working.
Yes.
I do agree.
Fred VanVleet, Devin Booker, Cam Whitmore, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and who the hell will their center be? I don't know, but that's a pretty dangerous foursome right there.
So I guess you laid out a package at the beginning. If we're looking at this from Milwaukee's perspective, like what is the end game in terms? So like we know the picks can be, you figure out the picks later, but what are the players would you prefer to get Amen Thompson over Alperen Sengun just because do you think Thompson has the higher ceiling? He's just cheaper right now. Are you trying to get Amen Thompson and Reed Shepherd? And that means you're probably not getting as much pick. Like what are you trying to do as Milwaukee if Houston is the team to which you're sending Giannis?
Much to your joy, Reed Shepherd isn't going anywhere in my perspective.
Well, hold on. Around. Now I have to interrupt again. Does that mean he's going to play?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm all for this. Keep going.
All right. So it's a good question. I have Sengun and Thompson rated somewhat similarly. But I will say this. Thompson's contract, first and foremost, is obviously a bigger asset. Secondarily, I think his trajectory is so ridiculously high that I could see a scenario where the Bucks go, Thompson is the guy we're betting on as opposed to Sengun. Sengun has the higher floor, though. Like, that's the thing. We know for sure, like, what his floor is, and we're not sure whether Thompson can get there. We're hoping, because it looks that way, but we've yet to see it full time. So it comes down to, like, a roll of the dice. What do you believe in? Do you believe there's a second layer of potential in Sengun that he's just yet to reach because he was playing on a fully stocked roster that emphasized defense far more than offense? Or do you just want to say, look, Amen Thompson is clay. He can be molded into anything we want. and we're rolling the dice on that. That depends on how your front office looks at things.
I think I would go the route of who does Houston deem less valuable in a Giannis trade, and also after a Giannis trade is part of that. Because as Milwaukee, I want as many bites at either the prospect or draft pick apple as I could get. And I think Şengün is young enough, and that contract is just, yeah, he got paid, but it's so innocuous enough, and it's they have him for 5 years.
Oh yeah, the contract is good. Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying in contrast to Thompson, who's like only in year 2 of his rookie deal.
It's no, I guess what I'm saying is who do you think Houston, if they're sending that out, do you think they view Thompson as the more anomalous asset? And so if they were sending out Şengün instead, you might be more likely to get.
Yeah.
Like if I'm Milwaukee, I'm playing if you're saying I'll use this as an analog, and I'm not trying to be perfect about it. Let's say Houston views Amen Thompson as the equivalent of 3 first-round picks and Alperen Şengün the equivalent of 2. I'm going to want Alperen Şengün and then an additional draft pick rather than just Amen if I'm the Bucks.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like again, personally speaking, I don't have a preference. It's everything's on the table, and like if this is the way they go and they decide to go top heavy, like the one thing that would give me some pause is it could feel a little like the Nets with Durant and Kyrie. Like it's almost the exact same situation. The Nets were finally finding their footing. Then they went all in on those two guys. This could be a similar thing. That said, I kind of trust Book and Giannis a little bit more because of the current age, and like I do think Houston might have more like just loaded up than Brooklyn had that back then.
Right. And the other thing was too is like Brooklyn still had a lot of stuff left over, and it was their cardinal sin wasn't, I guess it was Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, but it also was they just made a lot of bad decisions after that. DeAndre Jordan over Jared Allen for one of them. Then you make that James Harden trade in general. And to be fair, that doesn't look good in hindsight, but if there weren't injuries or Kyrie Irving's pandemic views, whatever the pandemic itself, like that team looked inevitable. Like it looked like it was going to win a championship. And so I would trust it more. And like you're getting 2 guys rather than like it was once they got the third is when it felt like Brooklyn all of a sudden was operating on this ultra thin margin for error.
Right.
The other team that is going to be mentioned, which is wild because they're favored to win the title, I believe, the Oklahoma City Thunder. I hate getting into them because we know that the Rockets are going to lose at this is not a title team. And I'm not trying to poo-poo over Rockets fans' dreams. Maybe they get past the Warriors. I don't think they will. I picked the Warriors in 7, I think. But the Thunder just might win it all. And so you have to come at this from 2 perspectives. If they don't win it all, is Giannis it might even be 3 perspectives. Does Giannis get them over that hump? Then if they win it all, do you just go get Giannis freaking Antetokounmpo anyway? And then the third part of all of that is, or I guess it's like the extension to one of those outcomes. Like, what are you like? How high are you willing to go with your offer? Because you have whatever picks you need. But if Milwaukee says we want J-Dub or Chet Holmgren, otherwise we're not making this deal, are you moving one? Do you not care which one? Which one are you moving if you have to move one? Where do you land on that part?
In order, yes. And I'm so glad you asked about J-Dub because this is the exact conversation I had on the Danish pod. And here's my take on it. Because I'm absolutely loaded with draft picks as well, and I can get more if I want to, because I can pivot off of other guys who are rotation level players who might not be playing as much. Like, let's say I wanted to get even more draft picks. I could shop Alex Caruso. I could shop Isaiah Joe. I could shop Aaron Wiggins if I wanted to. All right. So what I do is if Milwaukee says Jalen Williams, that's the guy we want, I'm going to ask Milwaukee, all right, how many picks will it cost us for you guys to take J-Dub off the table? And I'll get an answer. And I'll say, yes, please. Deal. Call it in.
I agree with that approach. But if that's not an option.
Yeah. If that's not an option, that's a real conversation, because then you get into like the whole thing about, do you want the long-term window or do you just want, let's just be real about this, the better player? Like, I'm sorry. Look, no, but here's the
No
thing.
no one should get mad that you said Giannis is a better player than J-Dub.
Oh, no. But like, I have seen some pretty wild takes from Thunder fans, like in basically saying, look, in 12 months' time, that might not be the case. And like, look, I'm high on J-Dub. I'm extremely high on J-Dub, but like, let's slow a roll a little bit here. It's Giannis. Like, let's relax.
Do you know where I get what? So, well, let's first start here. Who would you, if you had, if you're allowed to choose,
Right.
would you give up Chet Holmgren instead of J-Dub? I'm assuming. Because you could argue that
Yeah.
Chet becomes more important with Giannis there, because and he really got him up against Memphis. By the way, Chet was like per minute. I don't think he's ever fired more threes for Oklahoma City. But you could argue. I think J-Dub is the better player, and I think
so too. But I like you. I would prefer to keep Chet around Giannis. Yes.
Oh no, I actually would prefer to keep J-Dub. I'm going to go with the upside, even though I think
Okay.
Chet's the better fit.
I'm
I
going
think
with
people
better
have
fit
got
there
too
because I
over their
think you
skis
can.
about would Chet be the Thunder's second best player. I think J-Dub is like Grant is really high on J-Dub, so I can't
As
confess
you
being
should
as
be.
high on him as he is, but like I love J-Dub.
Same. That's the thing. Like, if you choose one or the other, people are going to be like, "Oh, so you hate that guy?" Like, no, this isn't one of those. Like, what's your favorite fruit? Apples. Oh, so why do you hate oranges? Right? It's one of those situations. Like, no, it's Sophie's choice. Is what it is. If you're looking at it like that, just all right, J-Dub or Chet. Oh my god, like that's so tough. Like, I agree with you guys that J-Dub is better. But I do think you can replicate him in the aggregate, to quote Moneyball, a little bit. I mean, I think you can.
Man, I don't know that size and being able to guard center.
I know.
Do some stuff around the rim.
Okay. Recreate a version of him, perhaps. Like, I just think it's easier to find flexible wings. But I hear you though. Like, I hear you. That's why I wanted to go the first approach. Just like, dear Milwaukee, tell us what it is that you want instead. Like, how many additional draft picks do you want? Like, that has to be the plan.
And there's also a part of me that, let's say the Thunder don't win a title, that I still there's a real part of me. It might even be the part that wins out that says, if that's the breaking point, you want Chet or J-Dub, then no. I'm going to say no. But that runs counter to everything we know about championship windows, is that for every team that is able to sustain or reorient, and I think Golden State and Boston are kind of the two primary examples there, there's everything else. You mentioned Brooklyn already. There's the current state of the Suns.
Right.
There's ever the fuck happened to Philly since 2021 every single year. And that list kind of goes on. And so that part of me is like, all right, you need to, if it's going to cost one of these guys and you don't win the title this year, if you win the title, you can just say, no, I'm not going to give up. We just won the title. We're not giving up either of these dudes. If you don't, I think it has to be a discussion. I don't know where I would land. I still might say no. If you won't let us go out and get you as many first rounders as you need for the equivalent of Chet or J-Dub. And look,
that's fair.
The one underrated thing though about what you said, those guys are both extension eligible. And so Milwaukee might be thinking at it through that, where it's okay, those fun maxes are fun, but they might say, yeah, there is a number of first round picks you could do to kind of offset that. It might make it more likely that you're able to just get Giannis while keeping both of them.
Right. Which would be preposterous.
Are there any other teams that you think stood out? I wanted to mention one as sort of I've seen it crop up, but I don't think people understand that it would cost them like one of their three primary components on the roster, and that's Memphis. They don't have like large tradable salaries aside from Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and Ja Morant. And so you can include, they also don't have a bunch of extra first round picks. They have all their own except for this year. Sure. That's like a tough, I'd be interested to see what Giannis and Jaren Jackson Jr. can do together. But if I'm the Bucks, Jaren might be the player that I'm targeting, because I don't think it'd be an interesting challenge trade, I guess, because Damian Lillard's injured now. But like, do you want a package built around Ja Morant? If you're all the picks, some of those like cheap prospects, like you would get Zach Edey, I'm assuming, like Ja, Edey, and picks for Giannis. Are you doing that if you're Milwaukee?
I hadn't even thought about Memphis in terms of as a Giannis destination, because just earlier today I just published a piece over at Yahoo about basically breaking them up, or well, at least trading Morant and then frankly not giving that kind of a contract to Jaren Jackson Jr. that everyone's envisioning, because I'm not sure I'm there. What does that do? Like, I'm trying to think of a way where, like, we can collect a roster or gather a roster in Memphis that makes sense for Giannis to go there. Like, I agree that if there is a front court partner that would make sense, it's Jaren Jackson Jr. and Giannis. Like, those two just, yeah. But it would take Morant. Like, what is your primary guard Desmond Bane?
It would. I mean, you have. If you're keeping Scottie Pippen Jr.
Yeah, Scotty's looking good. So Scotty, Bane,
maybe Chris Paul signs there.
I don't know, man. I like the first. I like the first couple of trades instead a lot better. The first three. This one,
I'm not gonna lie. I'd probably do it if I'm Memphis. I don't. Milwaukee's where I give pause for it, because I don't know what the end game becomes with John, Edie, and then like Dame is still.
I mean, no, I do it if I'm Memphis. I'm just asking, like, what's the long-term motivation, or what's the long-term
to win a title?
outlook?
Come on, Mort.
Sure, but like, can they really surround him with? Well, maybe they can. They still have Zach Kleiman, who can pick up like gold at the end of the second round if he wants to. It's just, I think Giannis's age is pressing a little bit on that one. Like, if Giannis was 27 and you gave Memphis like 2 years of runway for it, all right, you know what? I'm all in. But it feels like it's a now situation for him. Can Memphis accommodate that? I don't know.
I think I mean, they're not. What you have to give credit to Milwaukee for is they've had misses, but like they've generally paid, and they did duck to second apron this year. I get it. But like Memphis hasn't gone to that extent, even where it's more, are they going to duck to second apron? No, it's, they're just going to duck the tax. So that's a really fair question. You're not in love with the Memphis idea.
Nope.
What are some other teams that you think need to be mentioned here?
I think those are the primary ones. We can add in those teams that are just kind of stuck in nowhere territory. But like, if they give up the vast majority of their good pieces on a roster, even trading for Giannis, there's a pretty good chance they're going to get stuck again, just in a different way. So it has to be those teams that have assets to burn and are close enough to make a run.
So let me throw a couple out at you as candidates.
All right.
I do think there's probably Lakers fans that think that they could get Giannis now because of what happened with the Lucas stuff, but it's not going to be the Lakers. You think Atlanta? They're going to have a new like front office figurehead there, but if they decide they want to keep Trae Young, they already don't have their own picks moving for this year, 26 and 27. Right. They just decided, well, we're going to set the rest of those on fire too. We're going to pair Giannis and Trae Young. And look, they have, if you're putting Jalen Johnson on the table,
yep.
Super interesting. I don't know. That might be and you do have some imminent firsts where we don't know if the Kings pick is going to technically convey this year, but like they could build a real package for Giannis, I think, if they wanted to.
That's one of those teams where I was thinking about that. Like, what is a team that's sort of stuck? That's Atlanta. But I do think their salary structure specifically is a major asset to them. I mean, look, Clint Capella is coming off the books. Karis LeVert is coming off the books. You might want to retain him, especially if you get Giannis, but preferably at a lower price point. You can always move on from Onyeka Okongwu. Like, you can also pivot off of Terrence Mann if you want to. Not saying that those two guys don't have a spot there, but perhaps you need to optimize fit. If you get Giannis in there, those two guys are tradable. You can also pivot off George Niang if you want to. Personally, I would probably keep him there just because of the spacing that he provides you. But no, there are some interesting parts here in play that might actually elevate them a fair bit. So that might be the one team currently stuck in the middle of nowhere that might see themselves slither out of that by making that trade. Yes.
This team is not stuck in the middle of nowhere, but I feel like they've been mentioned with Giannis for years. Is there a pathway to Golden State building a real offer? They have some picks they could give up. There's pods. I don't think a Kuminga sign trade is going to wet anybody's whistle.
Is Jimmy the guy that goes out? Has to be, right?
I think and in that situation, I'm wondering and he's going to a third team that is sending stuff to Milwaukee because Milwaukee's not going to want Butler. I think
Oh
you
my
might
God,
be able
yeah.
to get there. It'd be tight if it's a Kuminga sign and trade and you're also trading Draymond. But I don't know. Are you ready to do that? Because honestly, I'd prefer Giannis, Jimmy Butler, Steph than Draymond, Giannis, Steph. I'm not gonna
Oh,
lie.
same. But like you probably
No,
can't get there
Jimmy has more
financially.
stand.
So
I think
yeah,
Jimmy has more standalone value than Draymond. Then
right,
Draymond certainly has more emotional value to the Warriors than Jimmy.
right. Even if you wanted to move Draymond instead, you'd be looking at 3 guys earning in like the mid 50s. That is top heavy as shit.
That is super top heavy. So it would have to be Butler going to Team X,
Somewhere.
and it's not
Yeah.
going to be Phoenix. They don't have the assets to like facilitate that for anyone. Uh, I just don't. They have real stuff to trade, but like I don't think they don't have like Giannis level assets because
Right.
this is going to be, even if they're trying to accommodate where Giannis wants to go, this is going to be a bidding war.
If they can turn in Butler, like, now wait a second there, because what they're going to use the Butler trade or the Butler contract to get Giannis.
Like, who is the team that wants to give up a bunch of stuff for Jimmy Butler while also helping another team acquire Giannis?
No, I was sort
Probably
of
Dallas.
that is
Dallas
fair.
is gonna trade Derek
Dallas,
Lively
the
and picks
Bull,
for Jimmy
like,
Butler. Yeah.
the Bulls got looped into the De'Aaron Fox trade because we just need to dump assets on you, and they were like, "Oh, cool, thanks for thinking of us." No, I was actually thinking of something else here, because if you get Giannis in there, presumably you want to pivot away from Draymond, right? Like I would assume so. Like that's when you can make him available. And what my thinking here is, if you can turn Butler and stuff into Giannis, and you can turn Draymond and stuff into Zach LaVine, I would not hate that.
Oh my God. I just I think I probably agree with you, but then you still kind of need Giannis isn't his best at the 5. Draymond can be his
I
best at
know.
the 4 or the 5.
Yeah. And that's where it is. I think that team needs more floor spacing. I think that team will just, you kind of like, imagine if it's Levine, Steph in the backcourt, and then Giannis just sort of handling everything else. Offensively speaking, that's tough. Like, that is extremely tough to guard.
I want to mention a couple other teams. Miami's just going to be mentioned, but what is you could throw Khalil Ware in there, okay, fine, but unless you're including Bam, you can only trade 2 outright first-round picks this summer. And I know Tyler Hero's value is better, but Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, Khalil Ware, and 2 first-round picks and swaps. Well, one, are they even throwing all that on the table? Because what's left after that?
Would Milwaukee even accept that?
Right, and that's like,
other teams in the league could beat it. Yes.
So they're a tough one. And something, I can't remember where I saw the report. This was earlier in the year, but there was speculation that the Knicks acquired Karl Anthony Towns to make it easier to pull off a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade. Now, if you look at that through the prism of saying Karl Anthony Towns has more value than Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo in that Detroit pick, which ended up being number 17. Sure, I think that's fair to say. I don't even know what that package has, a ton of moving parts. There's like 3 and 4 and 8 teams involved, and Giannis has to really push to go to New York. I didn't see that logic. Although Giannis and Jalen Brunson would be fun as hell. And then if I'm the Knicks, like, I think most teams, if you're trying to get picks to send to Milwaukee, or does Milwaukee just want players, they're probably being insistent on getting OG Anunoby over Mikal Bridges at this point. I don't know. And I would prefer to pair OG with Giannis and Brunson. And even then, we talk about a Knicks team doesn't take enough threes. Giannis coming in and you're losing Karl Anthony Towns. I was just fascinated. I couldn't bring myself to figure out the logic behind how does a Karl Anthony trade make it easier, aside from
don't move him. Don't move him, because he is a 3-point threat. Yeah, like Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, that probably works financially.
And then what like swaps is getting you there?
Right, look, there's a reason I brought up San Antonio as my first one, because they have picks. Like, that has to be one of the major demands from Milwaukee. I have to assume so.
I would say, you would hope. If it's not, I have some questions about the process.
Same.
Are there any? What about? I think, can Denver do anything?
That's the fun one, right? That's the fun one, because you want that to be like Michael Porter Jr. and something.
They can trade 1 first-round pick. I think they have some
Right.
swaps they could give up in there. That's I mean, but you're
Yeah.
including, if they ask for it, you're including Christian Brown and/or Peyton Watson, right?
Yeah. You gotta. It's
I mean,
Giannis.
Peyton Watson might as well go. I don't really see a pathway to him and Giannis playing together.
Right.
But even do they have the financial stomach for that? So you're going to pay Giannis, Gordon, Jokic, and Murray?
I
Giannis is
think
making
right.
more than MPJ. That's a lot. Like you might be able to offset that money next year, but moving forward, that's going to be pricey.
I think right now they absolutely have the stomach for it for one reason. They are being slaughtered in the media for never having given Nikola Jokic an all-star. Like that is all everyone's talking about. This would send a message. And look, if there's a guy worth his contract, it's also Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I honestly, I don't think NBA teams mind paying a ton of money as long as they get production in return that's obviously outweighing, the compensation level. You don't have to worry about that with Jokic or Giannis or Luka, some of those guys. If you pair them, it becomes a question, right? Where are you going to get the same production out of this guy? Like, is Giannis going to trickle down from 30 and 12 and 6 to 23, 9 and 4? Is that worth it? Like, some teams have that line of thought, right? I don't think so personally, because he'll be playing with Jokic. If anything, I could see a scoring go up.
At that point, though, can you keep Aaron, like, functionally? And to the Nuggets' credit, I don't mean to gloss over this. They've paid players. They more so cheap out if it comes to keeping front office executives. So I'm with you that they would pay it, but Aaron Gordon and Giannis on the same team where Jokic is your center, I'd be fascinated, but like someone needs to take threes there. So you're probably looking at moving, if you're moving MPJ, you're then moving Aaron Gordon to get shooting, or at least trying to, right?
I would have traded Gordon over Porter, but the contract is just not big enough. Not right now.
Do you think that Gordon does he even have more trade value than MPJ?
Yeah, I think so.
I think you're probably right. Maybe the Bucks would value the stability of just having him under contract, but they'd also probably be leery of, well, we've seen what this guy looks like without Nikola Jokic, and we certainly do not have Nikola Jokic.
Right. So, and honestly, I think that's part of the calculus for a lot of teams dealing with Denver. Like, they're looking at those guys and go, like, again, Jamal Murray. We've talked about this on this podcast before. Like, are we sure that any team that wants to trade for Jamal Murray is thinking, oh yeah, he'll be better without Jokic? Like, is anyone thinking that? I doubt it.
No. Are there any like super dark horse or fun teams you want to throw out there that we haven't mentioned yet?
No.
I don't think they would do it. Detroit would be fun. Just to throw him in.
Detroit would be fun. But like, again, what's the package? Do they have enough? Like, what makes sense?
I mean, I'm not saying you include all these guys, but they have all their own picks. Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Ron Holland. I think they could put together a real offer.
Cade and Giannis would be fun. And if that's the nucleus you can build around those guys, you probably extend his window a little bit, Giannis's, by pairing him with a younger secondary star as well.
Doesn't he seem like kind of the maniacal competitor that might think in those terms too? Maybe not. Maybe he wants to go to a Golden State or a Lakers or a New York, or he's just fine. Like, oh, Houston or OKC, San Antonio, like they have. But Wemby would be him thinking like that, where it's San Antonio is not an undesirable market, but players traditionally aren't trying to force their way there necessarily. But then De'Aaron Fox did, because Wemby exists. And what have we heard everyone say on and off the record? That he's not gonna be the last player to do that.
Right. Someone DM'd me after the Danish episode, bringing up the Bulls through the spectrum of Bucelas, and I was like, that's just not enough, because while he's interesting,
what are the Bucks? The Bucks have to send something else to Chicago in there,
right? Exactly, right. And then I started like workshopping it, and that's kind of why I came up with the whole thing where it's so tough for like these teams that are stuck to go anywhere. It's like, let's even say, now I'm just going to use the Bulls as an example. Let's say they removed or not, well, traded out all of their best players and all the draft picks. They own all their draft picks, all of the draft picks. Where the hell does that leave them? Right back at the beginning. Like, it's those teams that I'm really fearful is going to like make a strong play on Giannis. and then without realizing, they just kind of biting their own tails.
Do you think there's any chance that Danny Ainge would they have all these picks that he just might be, I don't know who they're trying, like pairing Giannis with Larry Markkinen would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And if, let's say, are they one of the teams that if they won the lottery, they could build a package for Giannis without including that Cooper Flag pick? Because then that gets like Giannis and Lowry and Cooper Flag. That's a team.
Can we just acknowledge how odd it'd be if he ended up in Utah of all places? Like that. I'm not saying it wouldn't be fun, but like what?
I fave it when, like, I loved it when Cleveland came out of the woodwork and got Donovan Mitchell. I loved that type because I want it. First of all, I want to see those teams take risks and then be rewarded for it, like Donovan Mitchell resigning in Cleveland.
That's true. That is true. Yes.
The Jazz don't have like the guy yet.
Right.
And Giannis, wherever he goes, that team is already going to have at least one of the guys, even if they view Giannis as the best of the guys.
I mean, I still view Lowry as a 4. I know he's playing the 3 a lot. I still think he's best at the 4. John Collins is exclusively a 4. So like if you get Giannis there,
healthy Taylor Hendricks, Giannis and Lowry, they can all play together.
I am glad you bring up Taylor Hendricks, also a 4. They've got a lot of 4s there. Kyle Filipowski's a 4.
You talk about pure 4s. Kyle Filipowski might be the purest 4.
Right. Like they have so many power forwards coming through their ass right now. It's like how the hell, like it has to come with a plan. Like if you get Giannis, it has to come with a plan. Like how do we actually round out this roster?
Boston wouldn't look at Giannis, right?
They would.
Their second apron, but like, what if it was just they're trying to simultaneously lop off payroll without, I guess, getting too much work? Like if it's Jaylen Brown and Porzingis as the baseline and they're going to take back less money, then, they can't aggregate. But if they finish under the second apron, they could.
Right.
Just that's super. I mean, they could, in the offseason, you could certainly work it. So Giannis and Jaylen are like basically at the same salary level. So you'd basically be looking at the difference between Porzingis' salary and you have to shed whatever it is that gets you under the second apron. With Al Horford getting older, the Kristaps Porzingis injury risk, and I wonder if like you could play Giannis with Al Horford, just bring him back, and then they would use Giannis at the 5. I have no doubt about that.
Right. I mean, yeah. Do you want to give Boston a stranglehold on the league for 3 years?
A stranglehold would be, can they game it where it's Porzingis and Drew Holiday and they get Giannis and figure,
yeah, that's true.
Like all the picks they finish beneath the second apron.
I also have a double standard there because let's face it, if he goes to OKC, that's probably the same thing.
Yeah. I think we've covered all is there a team that if they won the lottery, you'd want to see them dangle the number 1 pick for Giannis?
Oh, all right. Let's see. Let's go to Tankathon.
Why is it Portland?
Yeah, that's fun. That could be fun. With Denny there, with Scoot there, you have Donovan Clingan.
But that'd be fun.
Yeah. You'll pivot off Jeremy Grant immediately, finally have an excuse for it. You still have Simons. You'll have the role player. Shaden Sharp is still there. That's fun. I like that one. That's not bad.
They feel like a dark horse, but I don't know if that's the right move for where they are.
Here's a fun one.
Oh, I know the team you're going to say because I was going to bring them up next. I bet you I can guess.
Yeah, all right.
The Raptors.
No.
Oh, what is it?
LeBron.
LeBron for.
No, we'll figure it. Like, look, Rob Pelinka. Like, I know that basically Clutch owns the Lakers at this point, but like he did move AD, and that came without warning, right?
Right, but LeBron has a no trade clause.
Oh, right, he does. I keep forgetting. Like for some reason, I still have it stuck in my head that Bradley Beal is the only one in the league who does that, who has that. All right, fair enough.
And I guess if Milwaukee just wants to put butts in seats, and LeBron was wanting to come to Milwaukee, but if you could send LeBron to, then you're running into it's Golden State would be the team that he probably wants to go to. Are they sending enough stuff to Milwaukee to make
right? Or New York? He's always had his eye on New York as well.
I'm not going to lie. After watching these Knicks and how difficult they make life on the offensive end at times for not offensives in the top 5, I'd fave it. I'd probably do it.
I wonder if you could actually go to LeBron and say, look, we need to talk. You probably can't. Look, we'll trade Bronny alongside you. Don't worry. You'll stay together. That's a promise. No, like Milwaukee wouldn't do it. Milwaukee wouldn't do it. Like what's their incentive?
Would Dallas dangle Anthony Davis for Giannis, or are they trying like all the picks with Derek Lively and salary?
No, but why would he do that? I'm trying to get Giannis in with a Euro here. I'm trying to get Giannis along with Luka. Come on, help me out.
That'd be fun. It's not possible.
I know. Unfortunately,
is that a real offer though? Dallas, Derek Lively, all the picks they could offer, and then you're step laddering your way there with salaries. Probably not. AD. AD and Giannis would be a defensive terror. AD becomes the 5 again, so he'd probably request a trade.
Yeah, he's going to be pissed, so that's not going to work out for anyone. You still have Kyrie, but he's going to be back like
mid next year.
Yeah,
Giannis might be able to see the vision, I think, in that circumstance at least.
But like, we still don't know what state he's going to be in. Kyrie, I mean, that's risky. I don't like it.
That feels very. I mean, especially because they were coming off, Kevin Durant in that case is coming off an injury. That feels very Brooklyn Nets-esque. Like it's a different side of the floor where it gets interesting, but it's okay. These dudes are a little bit older. And Kyrie's obviously older, I think, than anyone on Brooklyn was at the time, but I mean, that's probably not even one of like the top 5 offers that would be on the table, I guess, Derek Lively and all the picks. So it doesn't really matter.
Again, I keep going back to the Spurs package. I think that's the one. We
already talked about that. We don't need to go back.
No. I keep going back to that being the best one, and that's the one you have to beat.
I think that OKC or Houston are the only teams that could beat it. But I think I mentioned them before. A team that could beat it, it'd probably be prided on where they end up in the lottery. But Toronto,
right? All right, so let's get into Toronto. You brought them up a couple times.
I think it's if they won the lottery, could they talk themselves into, all right, here's this pick. We could move other picks. There's some salaries like just between Brent Ingram could be part of the matching salary going out. They've already kind of said, fuck the 3-point volume or floor spacing aspect of this when you look at kind of how their core is built right now. They just have a ton of digestible salaries, I would say. Unless
you
really
don't want to move Scotty instead of Ingram because of the floor spacing. Remember, what Scotty Barnes gives you, Giannis is going to take a lot out of. Like, the all-aroundedness of Scotty Barnes is not going to be as big of an asset alongside Giannis. He's going to stand there a fairly significant amount of time with just his thumb firmly placed up his backside.
I think if you had the number 1 pick, you could maybe get away with Cooper Flag and picks, and you're keeping Ingram and Barnes to pair with Giannis, and you're using there's the Jakob Poeltl salary, there's the RJ Barrett salary. There's Emmanuel quickly, but I think he becomes super critical if you're bringing in Giannis. So there would be ways for them to game it. We know like Masai's kind of had his eye, like at least his side eye on Giannis for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate the Giannis Barnes pairing. I think that Barnes could turn into like a better spot up shooter. We've seen a little bit of it.
Have we seen enough?
You make the bet on talent, figuring that one out. That would just be that would be one of the more fascinating ones where I wouldn't feel immediately good about him arriving there, but I wouldn't hate it if they did it.
Yeah, I feel so.
Anything else you want to mention before we get out of here?
No. I think we went through half the league, if not more, on this one, and I'm still very much sold on my personal trade package. Nothing that has been said has convinced me of otherwise. Sorry, sir.
You were nothing but humble. Why? So why? It's weird to talk about in Houston and OKC terms because they're still in the playoffs.
Right.
I do think if one of those teams wanted Giannis, they would just be in a position to go get Giannis over San Antonio. That's my
maybe. Maybe I'm also trying
to. They have. I think any of the young players, the top end young players, the Spurs, even if they're putting Steph Castle on the table, you're not beating Şengün or Amen Thompson. I'd argue they're not even beating the Jabari Smith Jr. if he's on the table. And if OKC's willing to part with,
now you went a step too far. OKC's the one. Like OKC is the one. That's the one where I agree. They can go in and get it. That's where it comes down to. They want to give up J-Dub. Like, yes, if they want to give up J-Dub and all the picks, you're absolutely right. That's the one to beat. Or that can't be beaten. That's the leader. The Rockets one I'm just not so sure of. I still have a lot of questions about their individual skill set as players. A lot of these guys, it feels like a lot of them have major warts. I do think the same can be said of the Spurs players going out, but the picks package is pretty significant. And also, I'm baking in that I assume it's not going to be one of those cold ass trades where Giannis has no idea where he's going. I have to assume it's going to be a conversation. And I'm pretty certain if you're asking Giannis, do you want to go to Houston or San Antonio? He's going to go to the big fella.
Will be interesting to see how it plays out. You want to tell our subscribers where they can find you and all the work that you do?
Yes, sir. You can find me over at Blue Sky at MSJ NBA, where I share links to the Danish pods, my work at Yahoo, to the work at Forbes, and so on. So, and also, of course, links to the NBA podcast, where this episode will also be.
Until next time, and as always, leave with a shout out to the one, the only, the indelible Frank Ntilikina.